The gift beyond time. The streets of the city pulsed with life. Cars whooshed by in hurried streams, horns blared in frustration, and the chatter of pedestrians filled the air with a ceaseless hum. Among the flood of people moving with purpose, Daniel Hayes walked alone, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, his thoughts weighed down by the familiar burden of uncertainty. Life had not been particularly kind to him. At 23, he was stuck in a dead-end job at a convenience store, barely scraping by while juggling night classes at a community college. He had big dreams once, dreams of becoming something more, of making a mark on the world. But reality had a way of smothering ambition under the weight of bills, exhaustion, and the creeping doubt that whispered, "Maybe you're not meant for more." He sighed, shaking his head as if to rid himself of the thoughts, and turned onto a crowded crosswalk just as the light turned red. That's when he saw her. The old woman stood at the edge of the sidewalk, her small frame swaying slightly as she clutched a wooden cane. She wore a thick, knitted shawl over her shoulders, her silver hair neatly pinned back, and her face, though lined with time, held an expression of quiet patience. People rushed past her without a second glance, too caught up in their own lives to notice her hesitance. Daniel hesitated too. He could just keep walking, pretend he hadn't noticed. But something about the way she looked at the road, as though it were an impossible chasm to cross, made him stop. Without overthinking, he stepped up beside her. "Need a hand, ma'am?" The woman turned her head slowly, her deep blue eyes locking onto his. They were striking, almost too sharp for someone her age. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "Why, that would be lovely, young man," she said in a voice that was smooth and steady. Daniel offered his arm, and she took it with a firm grip. As the pedestrian light blinked green, he matched his steps to hers, shielding her from the chaotic foot traffic. "People move so fast these days," she murmured as they walked. "Yeah," Daniel said, glancing at the crowd pushing past them. "Guess everyone's in a rush to get somewhere." The old woman chuckled. "And yet they never seem to know where somewhere is." Daniel smirked. "That's deep." They reached the other side safely, and she released his arm with a soft pat. "You're a kind soul," she said. "Not many stop to help anymore." "It's nothing," Daniel replied with a shrug. "Just doing what anyone should." "Oh, but should and do are rarely the same thing." She studied him for a moment, and then, as if deciding something, she reached into the folds of her shawl and pulled out a small ornate box. "I'd like you to have this," she said, holding it out to him. Daniel blinked. That's really not necessary." She simply smiled, pressing it into his hand. "Take it, dear. You'll understand soon enough." Before he could protest further, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd with surprising speed. Daniel looked down at the box. It was old, the wood dark and polished with age, engraved with strange symbols that curled and twisted like vines. He ran his fingers over them, a shiver crawling up his spine. That night, sitting in his tiny apartment, he opened it. Inside was a single silver key, and beneath it a note written in delicate, swirling script. "This key does not open doors. It opens fate." Daniel frowned. "Well, that's not ominous at all." He turned the key over in his hand. It was cool to the touch, slightly heavier than expected, with engravings that matched the ones on the box. Curiosity gnawed at him, but there was nothing to unlock in his cramped apartment. He set the key on his nightstand and went to bed, telling himself it was just a strange trinket, nothing more. But sleep did not come easily. His dreams were vivid, filled with flashes of places he had never seen. Ancient halls lined with books that whispered as he passed, a sky split in two by light and shadow, a door standing alone in an endless field of stars. And through it all, a voice, barely more than a whisper, calling his name. When he woke, the key was clutched in his hand. Over the next few days, odd things began to happen. Shadows seemed to move when they shouldn't. He caught glimpses of flickering lights in the corner of his eye. But when he turned, there was nothing there. People he had never met gave him knowing looks, as if they recognized him. And then, on a quiet afternoon, he found the door. It was in an alley he had walked past 100 times before, a nondescript metal door set into the brick. But today it was different. Today the symbols on the key burned faintly as he approached, and his pulse quickened in response. He glanced around. No one was watching. With shaking fingers, he fit the key into the lock. The world tilted. The door opened, revealing not the alley beyond, but something else entirely. A vast library stretched before him, shelves stacked impossibly high, filled with books that seemed to hum with life. The air was thick with the scent of parchment and something electric, something old. And at the center of it all stood a man, tall, dressed in robes woven with silver threads. His eyes were the same piercing blue as the old woman's. "Welcome, Daniel," he said, a knowing smile on his lips. "You've been expected." Daniel stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind him. That was the moment his life truly began. Daniel's journey had only begun. As he explored the depths of the library, he discovered that every book held a fragment of a lost history, a glimpse into the threads of fate. The librarian, whose name was Elias, explained that this place was the archive of possibilities, a realm beyond time, where every choice and every future was recorded. But Daniel had not stumbled here by accident. He had been chosen. The key was not just an artifact. It was a responsibility, a test. There were forces at play that sought to alter the balance of fate itself, and Daniel, whether he was ready or not, had been brought into the war for destiny. As he unraveled the secrets hidden within the archive, Daniel would soon learn that the old woman who gifted him the key was more than she appeared, and somewhere, in the corridors of time itself, a door was waiting for him to open it, one that would change the fate of not just his life, but of the entire world. Daniel's training begins under Elias's guidance, learning the ancient art of the archivists, those who guard fate itself. But as he delves deeper, an ominous force stirs in the shadows, watching, waiting for its chance to seize the key and reshape reality itself. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful tales like this one, don't forget to hit subscribe to American Fables on YouTube, where every story has a lesson and every voice matters.